If you're looking to get started in property through Airbnb, well, in this video, I'm going to break down how you can go about getting your first Airbnb deal in 2026, because there's a few different strategies that you can use. So I'm going to break down the most common types, and then you can choose whatever works best for you to help you get that first deal. So if anyone doesn't know who I am, my name is Elliot. I own a property management company. We currently manage over 30 Airbnb properties, and all of the methods I'm going to share with you today, I've actually used at some point myself along my journey. So I know that they work and you can use them yourself. So without any further ado, let's just get straight into it. So the first way is through something called rent to rent, or also known as rent to service accommodation. This is where you simply rent a property through an estate agent or from a landlord. You will then fully furnish that property if it doesn't come furnished already, and then you simply market it online to guests who will come and stay anywhere from a couple of days, sometimes weeks, or even months at a time. The difference in terms of what those guests pay you versus what you then pay in your rent and any bills like your utilities and Wi-Fi and things like that is how you're left with the profit. It's very straightforward. You sign a contract that basically says we're all going to pay a set amount of rent every single month. That agreement is called a company let. The difference after you kind of paid all your expenses, you're left with your profit, and anything you make is yours to keep. So it's very straightforward, and that's how a lot of people get started within this method. That's how I got started. A lot of my peers and my colleagues who are also in the Airbnb space also got started through this model of rent to rent. So your next question is probably going to be, how do I actually get an estate agent or a landlord to give me their property for a rent to rent? So first of all, I'll talk about estate agents because they have access to the majority of the properties that are on the market. Now, the easiest way to find these deals is going to be on the open market using websites like Rightmove and Zoopla. That's where the majority of properties are advertised, and you can literally use these platforms to search for properties in the area that you decided to operate in to look for deals. Now from here, you're simply going to call these estate agents over the phone and pitch them on the idea of you using their property for your rent to rent. And you're going to tell them that you're looking to accommodate families and working professionals in the local area on a short to mid-term basis. Now, not every single estate agent that you call is going to be open to the idea. Remember, like I said earlier, we're going to be using company let agreements. Well, not every single estate agent actually deals with company lets. Sometimes they only deal with like normal tenants, such as like a family, a couple, single person, that sort of thing. So don't get discouraged. There's naturally going to be a bit of pushback or rejection, but what you need to do is find the agents who do allow company lets. There's plenty of them out there. There's literally thousands of estate agents throughout the UK. So just look and find the ones that do. They're not necessarily going to have it advertised on their website. So it does require a little bit of work. You've got to maybe call a few dozen to find the ones that actually do and find the properties that are going to be suitable. So that's calling estate agents over the phone. But another method you can use is actually going into estate agent branches as well. A very underrated and underutilized strategy that I see. When you actually go into branches to meet with these agents in person, your success rate will be a lot higher in terms of acquiring deals because it's easier to build rapport with people. They can see someone face to face. You're not just like a stranger who's calling over the phone. People can see you, and you may be able to articulate and describe your business model in terms of how you work a little bit better in person as well. So if you have the capacity to, definitely go into branch, go and visit these estate agents, pop in, give them a business card, take an email or two, and that's really going to help you get deals from estate agents over calling them over the phone. So that's for estate agents. Now let's talk about landlords. So the easiest way to find deals from landlords is to also use online platforms. The best ones to use is OpenRent and also Gumtree. So OpenRent is a dedicated platform for landlords to advertise their properties, and also Gumtree, I'm sure everyone's heard of it. People can also advertise deals there. This is great because you can actually speak directly with the property owners. When you speak to estate agents, sometimes it's their company policy. They don't want to deal with organizations and companies like ourselves, but with a landlord, it's just simply down to their preference. So if they like you, they like the sound of you, they like the way you're coming across, you've got a greater chance of being able to secure that deal. It's not like an estate agent who will literally say, yeah, I do like the sound of this, but unfortunately my company just doesn't do this. So when you do find these properties, it's simply a case of, again, calling the landlord over the phone, saying that you've seen their property, asking if it's available, and then pitching them on the idea of you taking on a deal. Now, if you do want help in terms of being able to pitch and understanding exactly what to say to position yourself right, that's something I do help people with. So if you're interested in knowing what that would look like, feel free to book in a call in the description below. But when you are pitching, it is important that you are prepared and you know exactly what you're going to say, because you only really get one chance when you speak to each person. So you just want to be fully aware in terms of all the value propositions, I call it, that you're going to provide, such as things like guaranteed rent. You're also going to take care of minor maintenances, you're going to take on the property on a long-term lease, and also maybe furnish a place as well. So that's how to get deals from landlords online. But there are actually other ways to get landlord deals, such as going to landlord events. So at these events and conferences, there's actually a room full of landlords who all have properties. Obviously they rent out, and it's a great way for you to just go through the room, connect with people, and see if there's any deals for you to be had. There may be a few properties that maybe, let's say, a landlord's struggling to rent it out, and then you who come in potentially pitch the idea of you run it as an Airbnb, and then that's your next deal. I always say you're only ever a couple handshakes away from your next property. So utilize your network, speak to people that you know, even if it's friends, family, barbers, taxi driver, whoever it is, there'll be someone in your network who may be able to steer you in the direction or in the path of someone who has a property that you can potentially use. It's a very underestimated method. Speak to people, utilize your network, because that's how a lot of these relationships are built. You don't always have to necessarily rely on just Googling properties online. So there is actually another method to get rent-to-rent deals that doesn't actually directly involve having to call estate agents or landlords. This is utilized normally by people who don't have enough time to do so, or just want results quickly and can't be bothered with the riffraff in terms of having to call people trying to negotiate deals. This is where you utilize what's known as a deal sourcer. So a deal sourcer is essentially like a broker who will find you a rent-to-rent property deal. You literally pay them a finder's fee, you sign contracts, and the deal is yours. You pick up keys and you're good to go. A rent-to-rent deal standardly sells for about £3,000. So if you have the cash available to invest, you can utilize a deal sourcer to get a deal very quickly, and you can just cut out that whole process of you having to source a deal. So that is an option available. Again, I've used deal sourcers in the past. Sometimes if they've had an amazing deal that I thought was worthwhile, also paying them for that deal. One thing you need to just be very careful of is that sometimes there are deal sourcers trying to make a quick buck, and basically they're trying to sell you like bad deals, or they haven't really been too transparent about the type of tenant that you're going to be for that property. The landlord doesn't actually know you're going to be running it as an Airbnb. They think you're just going to be you and your partner moving in. So that's just something you need to be very careful. You need to understand who you're working with in terms of this deal sourcer. Do they have credibility and are they trustworthy? But there are plenty of good deal sources out there, and like I said before, I've used some myself to get deals. So those are the main ways to get rent-to-rent properties: through deal sources, through agents, or through landlords. There is one thing I just want to make clear, is that not every single property you see on the market does work as a rent-to-rent. You can't just simply just grab any property, just rent some shed and think you can put it on Airbnb and print loads of money. It's not the way it works. You need to ensure that the property is in a good area that has demand for people needing to stay there, so that you can actually make a profit. Because the last thing you want to do is now sign a contract that's legally binding to say you're going to be liable for this rent every month, then you're not making the income and then you're in a loss. You're going to have to pay out of pocket on this property. It is very important that your research is done beforehand, so you ensure that you're taking on the right deal. I'm not going to break down how to find a good deal in this video. I'll do another video on that in the future. If you need help, let me know and I can help you out. Cool. So that is rent to rent. Now, the next way of getting an Airbnb property is through what's called Airbnb management. This is very similar, but it's slightly different. Instead of you being liable for the rent and bills, etc., like previously with the rent to rent, with the management model, you simply just manage that property on behalf of the landlord or the investor. So you're not financially responsible for anything. You will just split the revenue, or you will take like a profit share. There'll be some sort of agreement you have with the management client in terms of how you take your fee. The way in which I do it at my company, we charge our clients anywhere from 15 to 20% of a management fee for any of the properties that they give us. So in terms of the benefits of using this method over rent to rent, the biggest one is the amount of upfront capital that's required. Because you're not financially liable to pay for any furnishing costs, you don't have to pay any deposits or any rent, it means that you can get started with a lot less money. So if you're someone who doesn't really have that much capital available, going down the management route could be better suited for you. One of the other benefits is that it's very much easier to scale. With rent to rent, obviously because it does require that investment, you've kind of got to wait till you get a few months worth of profits to pull the money out, and then you go again into another deal. With management, there's no limit to in terms of how many properties you can take on. It just depends on how limited you are in terms of like resources to actually manage the property. But if someone was to give me 50 properties tomorrow, that's completely fine. I just add them to my systems, add them to my processes, and I can simply manage them. So for that reason, management is great. But the downside is that it can actually be harder to get into. This is simply because if you were to go to a landlord who's looking for their properties to be run as and managed as an Airbnb, why would they go to you versus going to another management company who's already been running for maybe multiple months or years and has a track record or has some other like client results that they can share with the new potential client? That's one thing you've got to think of. How are you going to get a landlord to trust you to manage their property if you have never done it before? It can be slightly difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's slightly more difficult than someone like myself trying to convince a client to give me their property, because I have multiple properties in my portfolio that I can just use as evidence. So how are you going to get these Airbnb management deals? For management, you need to go straight directly to the landlord. This is not something where you can call estate agents and do it through. You need to be in direct contact with the landlord, because ultimately they're the decision maker. They are the owner of the property. One of the things you can do is target properties that have been on the market for the longest period of time. Again, if you were to go on a website like OpenRent or Gumtree and you can see a particular listing or advert has been up for multiple months, it's obvious that no one has moved in and that property is sitting empty. Therefore, that landlord is most likely losing money each month because he's probably still paying a mortgage on that property. So they want someone in, or they need to generate some money. Therefore, this is a great way for you to approach the landlord to say, look, I've seen your property's empty. It could work amazingly well as an Airbnb, as a service accommodation. I'm willing to manage it for you. I will take a small percentage, but I think we would be able to achieve higher returns than than what you could simply get by renting it to a normal tenant. That is what is essentially going to help you win deals. Landlords just want to make a profit on their property. Majority of landlords invest into property because they want to make money. They want a capital appreciation, but also they can make some profit with the cash flow each month. If a landlord can rent a property out for £1,500 on the open market to a standard couple, or they can give it to you and you run it as an Airbnb and you can make them £2,000 a month, that's obviously £500 extra they're getting each month. On top of that, they're not having to put in any work. They're basically making that money for free each month. You're going to be managing the property, maintaining it, having your cleaners go in there. Any maintenance issues you're going to be resolving. So it's really a no-brainer for these landlords. They just may take a little bit of convincing and reassuring to help them understand how this business model works. A lot of landlords are pretty old school. They haven't rented their property out on a short-term basis before. They've probably just given it to a tenant each time. So you may need to give them a little bit of education about how things work. But if you can really convince a landlord in terms of why your management is going to be more beneficial for them, they're going to make more money, but also the property is going to be maintained, that's what's really going to help you get some management deals. So that's the easiest way to get them. And also utilize your network again. Speak to relatives, friends of friends, someone in your network, someone in your circle may have a property that you can use for management. A lot of the people and clients that I've worked with who maybe didn't have enough funds to rent and wanted to go down the management route first, often were able to get a deal by someone that they actually knew. And once they were able to get that deal, give a great service, help the client make more money, then you can go to other landlords, approach them, and now you can say, look, I've got a case study of a property that's in your local area, just down the road, in fact, similar style and spec to yours. I reckon that we can achieve the same results for your property, that way you're making more money and everyone's happy. But there's one thing to note about Airbnb management, and that although technically it's called management or just managing the property, there is actually going to be a bit of pressure from your management clients because they're going to have a certain expectation of income that they want to be making. So the last thing you want to do is overpromise and underdeliver. That's why it's very important to do thorough analysis on the area and on the property before you take it on to ensure that you can actually achieve the results that you say you're going to be able to achieve. Because trust me, this is going to help you avoid a lot of awkward conversations down the line with your clients, because maybe you told them they could achieve 2.5 grand. The market rate they could get from a tenant was £2,000, yet at the end of the month you only paid them 1,500. So technically there was actually a £500 loss in terms of what they should have been making, and that's going to be a very bad situation that you don't want to be in. So because of that, it's very important you do your due diligence on the property before you take it on, and also you don't take on any management deal just because you can. And let me explain. Because as you are the one marketing this property, that is going to be listed under your business name. Therefore, if a guest was to complain about the property, that review is going to be left on your account. So you can't be taking on any rundown properties that got issues, because guest complaints are going to leave negative reviews on your account, and that's going to affect your overall bookings, not only just for that property, but also for other properties that you may want to take on as well. So before you take on a deal, look at the property itself. Is it synonymous with the branding and the image that you want to create for your business and your brand? For example, if you want to be known for luxury Airbnbs, you can't be taking on low to mid-end properties. You need to make sure all your properties are top tier. So that's just one thing to note as well. Although you're not financially liable for these properties, the guests don't know that the property doesn't belong to you. In their eyes, it's your property. So if they don't have a good experience or they don't like it, they're going to leave a negative review, which is going to go against your company and your business. But with that being said, management can be a great model, and that's how I've been able to scale my business. One of the great things is that if a landlord who's what's known as a portfolio landlord owns multiple properties, they may decide to give you a whole of their portfolio, and now it's maybe 5, 10, 15 properties that you've got on your books. So you can really scale your business through this model. So yeah, those are the main ways to go about getting your first Airbnb property. If you ask me for my favorite, what I'd normally recommend people to do is start off with rent to rent. Start off with a few rent to rents, get your systems and processes in place, and after you've been running for several months, you can then use your results to show to other landlords to then get management deals. And that way you can have a mixture of rent to rent and management deals to grow your portfolio, grow your business with a good balance of profitability, but also being able to scale quickly at the same time. But if there's one thing I want to leave you with at the end of this video, it's that everything works. No matter what method or strategy you want to utilize to get deals, everything can work for you. It's just about doing the work. So just pick one strategy, pick one method, stick at it, put in the work, and then deals will come. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video and found it insightful. If you did need any further help on anything that I spoke about, any of the points I touched on, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram and I can help you out. But if you did enjoy the video, please drop it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.